Ashley, I want to come back to your point about President Trump's advisors playing along and dig a little deeper into this White House beat. You wrote this week that the president, quote, has no clear endgame to actually win the election, even as his campaign continues to contest the results in several states. Ashley, behind closed doors, is this just about showing voters that he fought to the end, maybe setting himself up for a comeback run in 2024? Or is there something else afoot? Could we actually see a battle in the Electoral College all the way to the House of Representatives?
It's twofold. At its core, this is a man who sort of loathes nothing more than to lose. And so what you're seeing is someone fighting and running against the tides of the inevitable and being enabled by his team and sort of establishment Republicans in Washington. But it's also a president who believes at his core, probably not incorrectly, that America loves a fighter, that's what his people and his base really like. Someone who goes down swinging, someone who fights for himself and for them. And so as long as he doesn't cross that fine line, and it is a fine line, into sore loser, this is a president who believes that sort of that fighting spirit may help him hold his vice-like grip on the Republican Party, on the Republican base, if he wants to run again in 2024, or if he simply just wants to hold on to the media spotlight and tease that he's going to run again in 2024 and kind of freeze the whole Republican field. But it is important to stress one final time, as we wrote, that there is no end game. I was pressing, when I was reporting that piece, senior administration officials on that very question, and one of them sort of chuckled and said, "You're giving us way too much credit." So again, like much in this chaotic administration, there is no end game, there is no master strategy, and this is not three-dimensional chess.
But, Rachel, you could still see the president and his allies in different state legislatures perhaps try to move forward on some front. The Biden campaign, it won Georgia today. Georgia was called. They're winning legal battles in states like Michigan. Is the Biden campaign up there in Delaware shrugging this all off, or are they trying to at least be on their toes about what could happen next?
They are not showing any signs that the reality and the results of this election are going to change. You know, it's interesting. According to our ABC News count, we have Joe Biden at 306 electoral votes. And that's how many electoral votes that President Trump had when he won the election. And he called it a landslide. And so they're not really giving too much weight into what the president is doing here. As he was pushing this just days before the election, they were calling it all a distraction away from the reality that at that time, Joe Biden was leading in the polls. What they do say, though, is this emphasis on the president not facing reality here, not coming to terms with the fact that he has lost the election. This puts the American people in a position where they are the real losers because they're not getting that critical access to the information that they need. And they say real-time access to that information is what they are going to need to assess the next crises in the United States. And right now, they just don't know what they don't know, to put it simply.
And I heard from Senator Pat Toomey this week, a Republican, that he doesn't believe in Pennsylvania, his state, that they're going to change the Electoral College, they're going to change the electors in any way. That's one Republican speaking out. But what about the rest of the party? It seems like they don't want to publicly fight with the president, based on my reporting. But some say this week that Biden should be getting intel briefings.
We still don't know who the president's going to be at this point. And so we should be in the same posture that we were in throughout the whole campaign, with both of them receiving briefings.
For the sake of protecting the country, you want whoever is going to assume that office to be aware of the significant threats, because the first responsibility of any president is to keep the American people safe.
And former President Obama, whose memoir is coming out next week, has also weighed in. Speaking to CBS's 60 Minutes, here is part of that interview.
I'm more troubled by the fact that other Republican officials who clearly know better are going along with this, are humoring him in this fashion. It is one more step in delegitimizing not just the incoming Biden administration, but democracy generally. And that's a dangerous path.
So there are cracks, but not a break. All those thousands of Trump supporters to prepare to rally this weekend in Washington. And it's all weeks before January's Georgia Senate runoffs. What will Republicans do now? Evan, what's your assessment of that, and also President Obama's view of democracy?
You know, what you've heard over the course of the last few days is this evolution in the message coming out of the Republican Party. It began with essentially a resistance of the idea of the reality of the numbers. Then gradually it became, let's just humor this president, give him time to process his feelings. And now we're into a third stage, which is sort of like the kind of nudging language you might hear when you've got a hostage taker who you're trying to get to come out of the bank without hurting himself or anybody else. It's an odd moment. And what you hear in President Obama's language is really important. This is not just about hobbling an incoming administration with the sort of the aroma of illegitimacy, which after all is what happened with him around the birtherism fiction. And that, I think, is in his mind, that we're hearing something similar. There's something bigger going on, which is really, it's about degrading the public confidence in the very office of the presidency. And that's not something you rebuild overnight, even if you are a president who seeks to unify in the spirit of Joe Biden. That is the real risk here. It has to do as much with our political culture as it does with our politics.
Ashley, what does your reporting tell you about the Republican Party? On one level, you saw Leader McConnell this week say the president can do whatever he wants, but there are some senators calling for briefings. Why are Republicans responding in this way?
I mean, first of all, calling for briefings is when Joe Biden has won the election is hardly a profile in courage. It's, as you put it, it's small cracks, but it's not great strides or great leaps. It comes down to, at its core, a lot of practical political calculations. There are the immediate ones, like the Georgia Senate runoff. Leader McConnell, he wants to remain the majority leader, so he doesn't want to do anything that will provoke President Trump's ire, prompting him to intervene in the Georgia race in a way that could be problematic for the Republican candidates. Then you have Republican senators who are up for re-election in 2022. Their fear is that President Trump, he's made clear he's not going away, goes on, for instance, a rally tour, coming to their city on a hot Friday night, rallying up his base for a primary from the right. They don't want to provoke Trump's ire for that reason. And all of these people, and again, a lot can change in 4 years, but my reporting, just about everyone I've talked to said, even though Donald Trump lost the election to Joe Biden, if the election were held tomorrow for a Republican primary, he would be the candidate. No question. He would be the winner. So you have all of these people, including people in his own administration, his own orbit, people who otherwise would be rising stars for 2024, like a Vice President Pence, like a Secretary Pompeo, who you're also seeing going out and making comments that are not exactly in line with the facts of this election, because they want to stay not just on President Trump's good side, but on the good side of his millions of supporters who will be crucial to lifting any of them to any sort of future victory.